Okay. Yeah, Michael Cook. I've just written a book called Reignite, the lifelong passion, secret to lifelong passion and intimacy, the outside sex revolution. Um, a bit about myself and what led me to this work. Most of my life I've been hands-on. I spent a lot of time working in the building industry for about 8-10 years. This is quite a few years ago. Um, did a lot of traveling, did pearl diving up north of Australia for quite some time. Worked in a few sheep stations, cattle stations out in the middle of Australia, um, and spent about 21 years working underground mining. So I've had quite a varied work life. But alongside all that, I've always been a deep thinker. Since my early 20s, I've always been interested in spirituality and psychology and understanding people and what's really going on beneath the surface of life. And when I met my partner, Vicky, I approached the relationship the same way, I suppose. Everything else I've done, I've always tried to be the best version of myself, no matter what I was doing, whether it was working physically. I've always wanted to approach that giving my all, and I think that's rubbed off into me wanting to be a good partner and show up in the relationship. So I think through our connection, we began experiencing intimacy in a very different way. A lot of it came naturally to us, but I think a lot of it was all just remembering how our body, what our body already knew. We explored it further and we realized there was something deeper happening through touch, connection, and how our nervous system responds. So we started research and realized there was a real science behind what we were experiencing. And that journey eventually became the book Reignite, which explores the psychology of intimacy and how the body works. And we give practical ways couples can reconnect throughout the whole book.
Hi, thank you so much, Michael. So let's get into the show. Let's get into the questions that I have here for you. My first question is this: what really causes intimacy and passion to fade in long-term relationships, even when the love between two people is still strong?
Question, Darlington. Um, I've actually come to look at that question through a slightly different lens over the years. I think when people ask why passion fades in long-term relationships, we usually point to the obvious things. We blame routine, the normal things: children, work, stress, getting older, poor communication. And while all those things can certainly play a part, I've often wondered if we're actually asking the right question in the first place. Maybe the first question isn't why has passion faded in our relationship. Maybe it's, has passion faded with one or both of us? Because I think relationships often reflect what's happening within us. When we stop growing as individuals, when life becomes all about responsibility and very little curiosity, when we've lost our sense of purpose, when we stop looking after ourselves, it's very difficult for passion to naturally flourish between two people. And then, of course, there's another layer, which we'll probably touch on today. Modern life can keep us under constant pressure. We become busy, distracted, and start living on autopilot. And when our nervous system spends too much time in survival mode, it's very difficult to feel playful, curious, or deeply connected with one another. And before we know it, We're sharing a house and raising a family, but we're no longer truly experiencing each other. So I don't think passion usually disappears overnight. I think it slowly fades when we stop creating the conditions that allow it to grow. And the encouraging part in that is those conditions can be created again. When we become more present, more curious, more engaged with life, we intentionally nurture both ourselves and our relationship, and passion often begins to return naturally. So before asking, where did the passion go? Maybe we can ask ourselves, has passion faded in my relationship, or has some of the passion faded within me? Because sometimes the relationship isn't where the journey begins. Sometimes it begins with us.
All right, thank you so much for the wonderful answer, Michael. So my next question for you is this. Many relationship experts emphasize communication, but you believe the deeper issue lie in the mind and nervous system. Can you explain what you mean?
Another good question there, Darlington. I think communication is incredibly important. And I'm certainly not suggesting couples shouldn't communicate. Healthy communication is one of the foundations of a strong relationship. However, what I'm suggesting is that communication isn't always where the problems begin. I've often wondered if we've placed too much emphasis on what we're saying and not enough on the state we're in when we're saying it. You know, if we're stressed, overwhelmed, emotionally exhausted, or simply running on autopilot, we're often not bringing our best self into the conversation. We become more reactive, more defensive, less patient, and sometimes we hear criticism when none was actually intended. That's why I believe the nervous system plays such an important role. The body and the mind are constantly working together. If the body doesn't feel safe, calm, and regulated, it's much harder for the mind to stay open and be curious and compassionate. So I think we've all experienced moments where we've had exactly the same conversation on two different days and had completely different outcomes. The words might have been almost identical, but our state was completely different. So for me, that's the missing piece. Before we focus on changing the conversation, it can be incredibly helpful to change the state we're bringing into the conversation. Because when the body begins to feel safe, the mind often follows. We naturally become more patient, more present, and far more capable of truly listening to each other. So maybe the question isn't just how can we communicate better? Maybe it's who am I being before the conversation even begins? I think that one question alone can completely change the quality of the conversations we have with the people we love.
Michael, thank you so much. So you talk about subconscious patterns and ego defenses. What are they and how do they quietly undermine connection between partners?
Most fascinating things about being human is that we're not always consciously choosing how we respond. There's a lot of autopilot going on there. And I think a lot of our reactions are influenced by patterns we've built over many years. When I talk about the subconscious, I'm really talking about all those experiences we've accumulated through our lives. Our childhood, our past relationships, disappointments, successes, habits, and beliefs all leave an imprint. And most of the time, we're not even aware of those patterns are quietly influencing the way we think, feel, and behave. Then there's the ego. I don't see the ego as something we need to get rid of. I actually think it's trying to help us. Its job is to protect us. The problem is that it often protects us in ways that create distance instead of connection. It encourages us to become defensive, to prove we're right, to avoid being vulnerable, or sometimes to simply shut down and withdraw. And one of the ideas I explore in the book is that our subconscious often begins interpreting a situation before our conscious mind has really had time to reflect on it. That's why we sometimes react automatically, and only afterwards do we stop and think, why did I react like that? I think we've all experienced that. And the interesting part is that a partner may not actually be reacting to what's happening in the present moment. They may be seeing today's conversation through a lens that was shaped years ago. And if we're honest, we're probably doing exactly the same thing to ourselves. So for me, awareness changes everything. The moment we become aware of those patterns, we create just a little space between the reaction and the response. And in that small space, we give ourselves a choice. We don't have to keep repeating the same patterns. We can pause, become curious, and choose a different response. So maybe the question to leave people with is this one. Am I responding to what's happening right now, or am I reacting through an old pattern that's no longer serving me? I think that one question can completely change the direction of a conversation.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. So let's move on to these questions I have here for you. All right, so stress has become a constant part of modern life. How does chronic stress affect desire, emotional closeness, and physical intimacy?
Thank you, Darlington. I think chronic stress is one of the biggest challenges we all face in relationships today. This because it's quietly affects every part of our lives, not just our relationships. When we're under constant pressure, whether it's work, our finances, raising our children, or simply trying to keep up with the pace of modern life, the body naturally shifts into a state of protection rather than connection. It's not that we've stopped loving our partner, it's that we're mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, and still carrying the weight of the day when we reconnect. Then we wonder why we don't feel like talking, even a cuddle, or being intimate. I think that's why so many couples say we still love each other, but we just don't feel as connected as we used to. The love is often still there, it's just hidden beneath the layers of stress and responsibility. That's why I'm such a big believer in creating a transition before reconnecting with your partner. It doesn't matter whether you've been at work, caring for children, running the household, or simply dealing with the pressures of everyday life. We all carry stress in different ways. So before you come together at the end of the day, take just 2 or 3 minutes for yourself. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Start by gently bouncing and shaking your whole body for about a minute. Let your shoulders soften, loosen your arms, and simply allow your body to release some of the tension you've been carrying through the day. Then spend about a minute taking slow, relaxed breaths, allowing your exhale to be about twice as long as your inhale. There's no need to force that. Just let your breathing gradually slow down. And what may help is that will signal to your nervous system that the day is over and it's time to settle. You haven't changed your circumstances, but you may have changed the state you're bringing into your relationship. So imagine this. If both partners spent just 2 or 3 minutes doing that before reconnecting each evening, instead of bringing the stress of the day into the relationship, they may begin bringing a calmer, more present version of themselves. I think small rituals like this can make a surprisingly big difference over time. Because sometimes the most meaningful conversations, the warmest hugs and the deepest intimacy don't begin with words. They begin with two nervous systems that finally feel safe enough to connect again.
All right, thank you so much. So, here is my next question for you. You encourage couples to work with the body's natural biology rather than focusing on performance. So what does that look like in practice?
Thank you, Darlington. Good question. I think for a long time we've approached intimacy with a destination in mind. We tend to focus on performance, intercourse, or reaching a particular outcome. And without even realizing it, that can create pressure for both people. And I've come to see it a little differently. Instead of asking, how do we perform better? I think a better question is, how do we create the conditions where intimacy can naturally unfold? And for me, that's where the body's natural biology becomes so important. When we feel emotionally safe, relaxed, and genuinely connected, the body naturally becomes much more receptive to intimacy. There's less pressure, less expectation, and we're able to simply enjoy being together rather than feeling like we have to achieve something. And I think we've forgotten that intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom. It begins in the little moments throughout the day. A warm hug, holding hands, sharing a laugh together, making real eye contact, or simply sitting together without distractions. Those moments quietly prepare the body for deeper connection later on. And one of the things I explore in the book is what I call outside sex. It's about taking the pressure off intercourse and working with the body's natural biology instead of against it. By slowing down, exploring touch, presence, curiosity, and connection without chasing an outcome. Couples often rediscover levels of intimacy they may not have experienced for years. So rather than trying to force intimacy, I believe we should create the conditions where it can emerge naturally. That's really the philosophy behind everything I talk about in the book. So maybe the question to leave people with is this one. Instead of asking what my partner expects from me, what if I asked, how can I help my partner feel safe, relaxed, and genuinely connected? So I think when both people begin asking that question, intimacy often takes care of itself.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming to my show. Once again, I appreciate you for sharing your insights and your perspective with me and my audience. So, Michael, is there one question you wish I would have asked you that I did not ask you?
It's an important one I think your listeners would like to hear about. Your book introduces the concept of outside sex. What is it, and how does it reshape the way couples experience intimacy?
All right, so how can listeners connect with you, learn more about your work as well?
Okay, well, the best place to start is with my book, Reignite, The Secret to Lifelong Passion and Intimacy. It brings all of these ideas together in a practical way that couples can explore at their own pace. We're also building the Reignite Institute website, which you can find at reigniteinstitute.com, which will continue expanding these ideas through courses, conversations, and resources to help people create deeper connection, not just in their relationships, but in life as a whole. We've also got an Instagram page um, at reignite.thebook and Facebook, reignite-the book. And on our website, reigniteinstitute.com, we have a free chapter that people can download so they can have a look at the book. And the book goes into full detail of some of the things we've spoken about, but into a lot more than we've had a chance to actually talk about, but that's okay.
All right. Michael, thank you so much for coming to my show, and thank you for sharing your insight and your wisdom with me and my audience. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Darlington, for having me on your show. Have a great day.
Thank you, Michael. Have a wonderful day. Bye.